Welcome back to Film Finds. Today I will show you this super heartwarming movie about an unlikely duo who become friends and help each other through some tough times. Philippe is this rich guy who gets paralyzed in a paragliding accident, and Driss is this young dude from the hood who becomes his caretaker. Despite their differences, they end up forming an unbreakable bond and bringing out the best in each other. It's all about the power of friendship and how it can change our lives for the better. Trust me, you'll love it! Spoilers ahead. Watch out and take care. One late night in Paris, Driss is driving his employer Philippe through the city and got stuck in traffic, which was super boring for Driss. So he decides to break the speed limit and starts driving like a madman, weaving through traffic and ignoring all the traffic signs. Naturally, this gets the attention of the police, who start chasing after them. But Driss is all like, "No problem, I'll just lose them." And he bets €100 that he can do it. They almost get away with it, but the police catch up to them after ambushing them from both sides. But Driss doesn't even flinch. He just bets €200 that he can get them an escort instead. And he manages to convince the officers to let him go by pretending that Philippe can't move and needs to be rushed to the hospital in an emergency. The officers fall for it and offer to escort them to the hospital. To celebrate their successful escape, Driss and Philippe share a smoke and then drive off just in time to avoid being caught by the hospital staff. It was a crazy night, but it only made their friendship stronger. This friendship began many months ago. Philippe and his assistant Magali are on the hunt for a new caretaker, but their search isn't going as smoothly as they had hoped. The candidates they've interviewed so far have all given really predictable or uncomfortable responses to their questions, which has been a bit of a disappointment. Just when things seemed to be at their lowest, a man named Driss burst into the room and started causing a scene. He didn't even wait for his turn for the interview. He just wanted Philippe to sign some papers so he could collect unemployment benefits. And he was very disrespectful and inappropriate, hitting on Magali and everything. However, for some reason, Philippe found Driss amusing and invited him to come back the next day to pick up his papers. Driss goes back to his home in a humble neighborhood and tries to take a bath while all his little siblings bother him, only managing to get it done in time thanks to his sister Mina, who is a bit older than the others and more responsible. While he's waiting for their mom to come home, he looks out the window and sees his brother Adama getting out of a sketchy car. When Adama comes into the apartment, he just says he was at school and then takes off again with his bag. Driss is pretty sure Adama is up to something shady. Later, their mom comes home and Driss gives her a stolen Faberge egg as a gift, pretending he's been on vacation for the past 6 months. But his mom is not happy to see him at all. She's fed up with all his lies and the fact that he disappeared for 6 months and never called. She tells him she has other kids to take care of and kicks him out, telling him not to come back. Driss spends the night hanging out with some neighborhood friends and smoking and snacking. It's been a wild day. The following day, Driss returns to Philippe's house for his documents, and he is welcomed by the housekeeper, Yvonne, who takes him on a tour of the house and tells him about Philippe's daily routine. She also shows him the room he will be staying in with his own private bathroom. Driss can't help but stare at the bathtub before being dragged to see Philippe, who offers him a signed sheet of paper but also a job opportunity. Driss accepts the 1-month trial, and Philippe tells him he bets he won't last 2 weeks. After bringing his things to his room, Driss is taught how to take care of Philippe. He must learn how to stimulate his legs, how to put him in the wheelchair, how to help him shower and change his clothes. Things get awkward when Driss discovers he must put on high stockings for him and even clean his butt after Philippe uses the bathroom. But no matter how much he complains and says he won't do those chores, he eventually accepts them as part of his job. Driss's evening snack on the roof is rudely interrupted by Philippe's daughter Elisa and her boyfriend Bastien, who are looking for a private place to get intimate. Driss isn't interested in sharing his beer with them, so he kicks them out. As he gets accustomed to his daily routine with Philippe, he makes some mistakes along the way, but he learns from them. He becomes skilled at organizing Philippe's mail into different folders, but he's not allowed to look at a series of private ones. When he finds a flyer for female escorts, he starts a special file for them instead of tossing them in the trash as Philippe requested. Despite the demands of his new job as a caregiver, Driss doesn't let work consume all of his time. He continues to try and woo Magali, though his efforts are unsuccessful, and occasionally turns to escorts for companionship in bed. One morning, Yvonne, his employer, finds dangerous weapons in his bag while scolding him for being late. Despite this discovery, she doesn't confront him about it. On this particular day, Driss is tasked with driving Philippe around, but he refuses to treat him like cargo and instead takes him out in one of the company's fancy, but underused, cars. Initially resistant to the idea, Philippe eventually becomes excited at the prospect of a more thrilling and efficient ride, though Yvonne continues to disapprove. As Driss and Philippe attempt to exit the building, they are confronted by a neighbor who has parked their car directly in front of the entrance, ignoring the clearly marked sign indicating that it is not allowed. Without hesitation, Driss approaches the individual and forcibly removes them from the vehicle, threatening them until they comply and move the car. Despite Yvonne's disapproval, Philippe is impressed by Driss's bold actions. The pair then travels to a museum, where Philippe intends to purchase a piece of art. However, Driss is unimpressed by the selection, believing that the piece, which consists of nothing more than a red blotch on the canvas, is not worth the price being asked. After their outing to the museum, Philippe meets with a relative who expresses concern about Driss's violent tendencies and criminal past. However, Philippe is unconcerned and values Driss's companionship as he doesn't pity him and is willing to joke around with him. Later, Driss has dinner with Yvonne in the kitchen while Philippe dictates a letter to Magali, revealing that he has been carrying on a purely epistolary relationship with a woman named Eleanor. As they eat, Driss teases Yvonne about the attention she has been receiving from the gardener. As Driss tries to sleep, he is startled by strange noises coming from the baby monitor and rushes to Philippe's room to find him struggling to breathe. Despite his initial desire to distance himself from Philippe, Driss is unable to ignore his suffering and helps him through the attack with calming words and a wet cloth to wipe his face. Eventually, Philippe falls asleep, only to wake up moments later gasping for air. This time, Driss doesn't hesitate to take action. He quickly places Philippe in his wheelchair, covers him with blankets, and takes him out for a stroll by the river. It is the first time that Philippe has seen Paris at night in a long time, and he is visibly relaxed as he confides in Driss about his struggles with phantom pain and the limitations of his medication. As they walk, Philippe also confesses that his physical condition prevents him from being able to pleasure a woman sexually, but he still derives pleasure from having his ears massaged due to their sensitive nature. When the phantom pain threatens to return, Driss offers Philippe one of his joints, which he is initially hesitant to accept but ultimately finds to be greatly enjoyable. After their evening stroll, Driss and Philippe go to a restaurant, where they share a meal and engage in playful banter as Philippe opens up about his past. He met his wife when they were students, and shortly after getting married, she suffered 5 miscarriages and was diagnosed with a terminal illness. It was at this time that they decided to adopt Elisa. Philippe has always been an adventurous and competitive person, and paragliding provided him with the excitement and thrill he craved. However, it was during a paragliding session that a bad weather event caused him to crash and break his vertebrae, leaving him confined to a wheelchair. Despite this, he believes that his real handicap is living without his wife, not the physical limitations of his chair. As they continue to joke around, Philippe realizes that Driss has successfully completed his 1-month trial period and is now officially hired. However, he asks Driss to retrieve the stolen Fabergé egg, which was a gift from his wife and one of 25 that she had given him to mark their time together. The next day, Driss goes to speak with Mina as she is leaving school. She is a bit offended that he has been ignoring her messages and only contacted her to ask about the egg, and she also informs him that the police have been calling their home. After speaking with Mina, Driss visits Adama, who confesses to having been caught with a significant amount of drugs in his possession. Driss offers to take him to lunch, but Adama refuses and instead gets into the same suspicious car as before. Later, Driss is present while Philippe dictates a letter to Eleanor to Magali. He finds the purple prose to be tedious and advises Philippe to be more direct in his communication. He is also surprised to learn that the pair has been exchanging letters for 6 months without ever exchanging pictures or speaking on the phone. Taking this as a sign, Driss finds Eleanor's phone number in one of the letters and calls her, forcing Philippe to take the phone and finally speak to her outside of the written word. Their conversation goes so well that Philippe begins speaking with her on the phone constantly, even right before he and Driss attend the opera. During the performance, Driss finds the costumes to be amusing and makes fun of them. The next day, Driss convinces Philippe to exchange pictures with Eleanor and selects a photo of him in his wheelchair. As Driss is painting, Elisa bursts into his room and asks for cigarettes, mockingly teasing him for trying to be artistic. Angered by her behavior, Driss kicks her out before going to see Philippe, who is currently asking Yvonne to choose a different picture to send to Eleanor, one in which he is not quadriplegic. Yvonne hides the picture inside the file for the escort agency just as Driss enters the room, complaining about Elisa and urging Philippe to discipline her, to which Yvonne agrees. Philippe agrees to speak with Elisa, but is surprised when Driss reveals that he has been painting. As the days pass, the friendship between Philippe and Driss continues to strengthen. Driss takes Philippe out to play in the snow and brings him along on his runs, and Philippe buys him his first suit and scolds Elisa while Driss listens through the baby monitor. When Driss finishes his first painting, he shows it to Magali, who slaps him when he tries to kiss her. However, Philippe likes the painting and promises to try to sell it for him. The two of them have a great time together, enjoying activities like getting a faster car, sharing joints, and even hiring escorts. When Philippe's birthday approaches, he is not particularly excited about it. Every year, Philippe pretends to be surprised when his family throws a birthday party for him, but he finds it tedious to have to entertain all of these relatives who only come to see him once a year to check that he is still alive. As Philippe and the guests enjoy some live classical music, Driss searches for Elisa, who is crying in her room after having taken some of Yvonne's pills in an attempt to end her own life. She is upset because Bastien, her boyfriend, broke up with her and called her a tart, and she asks Driss to talk to the boy, which he agrees to do for a fee. Meanwhile, Philippe is showing Driss's painting to one of his relatives and manages to convince them to buy it for 11,000 euros. When Driss returns to the dining room, he chats with Yvonne, who tells him that Magali is in a rocky relationship with someone named Fred, giving Driss hope for a potential future with her. As the party begins to wind down, Philippe forces Driss to listen to some of the most important songs in classical music history, but Driss can only respond with jokes. Once the band finishes playing, Driss brings out his iPod and plays Boogie Wonderland by Earth, Wind and Fire before breaking out into a dance in the middle of the floor. He is an incredible dancer and even manages to get the rest of the partygoers to join him, much to Philippe's enjoyment. Later, as he is putting Philippe to bed, Driss opens Eleanor's latest letter to him. She has included a picture of herself, which reveals that she is quite attractive, and mentions that she will be visiting Paris the following week and would like to meet in person. On the day of the planned date, Yvonne and Driss help Philippe try on dozens of outfits until they find the perfect one. Since Yvonne will be taking Philippe to the date, Driss uses his day off to visit Bastien and threatens him until he agrees to apologize to Elisa and bring her croissants every day. He also asks Bastien to fix his hair. After his mother's shift at work ends, the man covertly observes her from a distance. Meanwhile, Yvonne and Philippe are sitting at a restaurant, anxiously waiting for Eleanor to arrive. Despite their patience, Philippe eventually becomes frustrated with the delay and calls for a ride home from Driss, leaving the restaurant without realizing that Eleanor had just arrived. On the same evening, Philippe treats Driss to a ride on his private plane and generously gives him the money he had earned from selling the painting, much to Driss's delight. The next morning, they arrive in the countryside and Philippe decides to go paragliding, dragging Driss along with him against his wishes. Despite his initial fear, Driss ends up enjoying the experience. Upon returning home, they are met by Adama, who scolds Driss upon seeing the scars on his face. Adama remains tight-lipped about his own life, causing Driss to send him to his room while he calls Mina to reassure her and puts Philippe to bed. However, Philippe is not yet ready to sleep and engages Driss in a conversation about his family. Despite initially being hesitant to share, Driss eventually reveals that Adama is not technically his brother, and his parents are actually his aunt and uncle, who had taken him in from Senegal when he was 8 years old. His real name is Bakary Baysari, but he was given the nickname Idris, which eventually became Driss, because there were already several other kids with the name Bakary Baysari at his school. Driss's aunt eventually had a miracle pregnancy and gave birth to more children after her husband passed away. Philippe, noticing that Adama could benefit from some discipline, decides to let Driss go so that he can be with his family, as he can't spend his entire life caring for an elderly man. The following morning, after Bastien brings Philippe's daily croissant with a new hairstyle, Driss packs his belongings and prepares to leave. Magali comes to say goodbye, and when Driss makes a final attempt to flirt with her, she introduces him to her significant other, Fred, short for Frederic. This revelation leaves Driss disappointed, as he realizes that Magali is not interested in men. As Driss departs from the house, he teasingly gives the baby monitor back to Yvonne and accuses her of lying to him about Magali's sexual orientation as a prank. In response, Yvonne hands him the escort agency file that he had started, only for him to discover that the photograph he had chosen was hidden inside. Disappointed, Driss discards the file but keeps the photograph for himself. As he exits the house, Driss finds that a car is blocking the entrance and politely asks the driver to move it, even though he no longer works for Philippe. When Adama calls him out for it, Driss explains that it's a matter of principle. Later, Driss and Adama pick up their mother from the train station. While back at the house, Philippe is having his first dinner with his new caretaker, who he finds to be stuffy and boring. Without even taking a bite, Philippe decides to leave the table and go to bed, since Yvonne is out on a date with the gardener, and there is nobody to reprimand him for his actions. As the days go by, Driss returns to his old life, reuniting with his old friends and warning the men in the suspicious car to leave Adama alone. During an interview for a job he is underqualified for, Driss impresses the employer by calling himself pragmatic and using the art knowledge he had acquired while working for Philippe. As a result, he lands a job as a driver. Philippe continues to be unhappy with his new caretaker and remains in a bad mood. One night, he refuses assistance from anyone in the house with his phantom pain, prompting Yvonne to call Driss and ask him to come over. This leads to the situation at the beginning of the story, with the police chasing after them and eventually escorting them to the hospital. After the adventure, Driss drives Philippe to the coast, where the sight of the sea helps him to relax. At some point later, Driss takes care of Philippe's unkempt beard before taking him to a restaurant for lunch. However, he does not stay for the meal, as someone else will be joining Philippe for company. Driss wishes Philippe luck and finally returns the egg to him before leaving, and Philippe becomes anxious about being alone until he sees who his date is, Eleanor, who is delighted to see him and doesn't mind the wheelchair at all. In real life, Philippe Pozo di Borgo now resides in Morocco, where he has remarried and has 2 daughters. Abdel Yasmin Salou, the real-life Driss, has his own company and is also married with 3 children. The 2 men remain close friends to this day.